Welcome to the latest episode of Branding the Experience. We discuss ways how we can create environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers want to keep coming back. I am Ken Bader, your host for Branding the Experience. We've got another great show. I know I always say we've got a great show because I don't do bad shows, but it's definitely a great show, and we have a great guest. We have another great guest. We have Christine Kloser, and let me tell you a little bit about her before we introduce her. Christine Kloser's philosophy as the transformational author coach can be crystallized into one simple teaching. It's the human being, the person behind the book that matters, which to me is all about branding in terms of the human touch, the human idea behind our messaging. Nothing works unless it comes from the inside out. We're going to talk about that. She began doing this inside out work in 1997. As we joke, she started when she was 16 as a transformational event facilitator, and to date has trained more than 70,000 entrepreneurs, leaders, and authors to write their books through this one core teaching. And we're going to get into that. Christine, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here, Ken.
We're excited to have you. Let's start off with, we talked about right before the show, we had a great conversation on the experience. And I think the work that you do with authors on that human aspect is also what we talk about in the show, of that human aspect of the whole experience. Give us a little bit of your background and talk about your expertise in providing that positive experience.
Oh my goodness. Well, I think that expertise goes back to the fact that my experience as a business owner began in 1991 in the health and fitness industry, actually. And I won't get into the whole story, but that led me to a point where I was, found myself bringing groups of women up to Lake Arrowhead, California, to facilitate this event called the Vision Weekend. And it was a weekend that me and a friend of mine led, and we really had no idea what we were doing. Like, I was coaching in 1997, lots of women who came to this event before I even knew what coaching was. And everything about what we did over the course of that weekend in these, various bungalows and ski chalets up in Lake Arrowhead, it was all experiential. We had no agenda. All we cared about was that each woman that showed up at those events got what they needed. The core to everything that I do is experiential. It is about the human being. Yeah. So that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, that's awesome. As people that watch this show know that I run a couple of events and conferences, and before I even look at agenda, I begin thinking about the experience. One of the most important things is we actually feed our folks sometimes breakfast, lunch, and dinner included in the conference, and I make sure that we're at a top-notch place that has above average or awesome food and service, because if that just doesn't work, you could have the best agenda and the best speakers in the business, and it just doesn't happen. And I love what you said about giving the audience what they need, because the agenda is almost a little secondary. That I found that if you build it rather loosely with some formality, but basically say you're going to get what you need. We're going to roll with this based upon what you want and what you as an individual or a business needs, and you're going to get tips that you can walk away from. That's actually more powerful than any stacked agenda that you could probably put out there.
Oh my God, Ken, I couldn't agree with you more. I remember I was at a mastermind with a bunch of my colleagues down in San Diego, and I was, leading into I was doing my first event that I had done for a few years, and I just feel like, I really feel like I just want to go do it, like unscripted, no PowerPoint. And they're like, Christine, you want to sell at this event, right? I'm like, of course I want to sell at this event. And they're like, you can't go in without PowerPoint. Like, you have to have something. And like just last month, I did my 7th iteration of that event. My entire agenda fit on a 3x5 index card. But 25% of the room ended up, making an investment in a $7,500 or $45,000 program with me.
Yeah.
Because it was all about them. It was all about their experience. And they just wanted more. No PowerPoint, no nothing, just dialogue instead of monologue and real deep dive communication. And yes, gorgeous lunches. And I brought a friend of mine in who's an award-winning singer-songwriter for the positive music movement. And I had him come in and give them a concert. And like anything I could do to give them that experience. I do, and I've been doing for years. And I swear it's what's fueled my business. Because I'm not the most crackerjack marketer. Like I do okay, but people remember that thing they did with me 20, 30 years ago. Some of them.
Yeah. One last comment on the whole conference event idea, and then I want to get into your expertise with books. But just an example for the audience, especially those that do put on events. I'm putting on, my annual conference for the POCUA in May, and the feedback on the last one was, we want to learn more about marketing and branding. And PowerPoint's just a tool. I'm going through all my PowerPoint stuff and, what have I done on branding? And we even have a business partner that has some expertise in that. We're talking, what can you create for this? And after a couple of conversations with them, I said, you know what? We're not doing any of that. We're going to put on the agenda that we're going to talk about branding, marketing, and social media. We're going to have some slides in the background that we can refer to if we need to, just as an example, but we're going to have a dialogue. We're going to find out exactly, what the pain points of each of our attendees are, and we're going to hit on that pain point as much as we can for their benefit and the benefit of the whole audience. So, you're actually giving me credence to my thoughts. So thank, as any entrepreneur, I always second guess myself. So, thank you for helping me to not second guess myself on this one. But let's go to
joy and pleasure. Actually, can I say one thing
Please.
Before we jump into more expertise? Because this has to do with branding. It was something I learned, oh my gosh, probably 10 years ago when I interviewed a VP from HP. She wasn't working at HP anymore, but she had a really high level position, and she was in the division of marketing and branding.
Sure.
And one of the things she said, which speaks so much to the experiential part that we're talking about, like branding the experience, branding actually isn't something that you do as much as it is a decision that your prospect or client makes about you as a result of how they experience you, how they experience your message and your marketing, how they experience you at a live event, how they experience you when they bump into you at the grocery store. But when she said that branding, it's not a logo. The logos are important. It's not a slogan. The slogans are important. The branding is done in the mind of the consumer. And I think if we can keep that in mind, it helps bring how important the experiential aspect of what we do, and really leaving people with an experience that makes them remember you favorably. Like that's where the branding really takes root. And that's why I think somehow I'm still standing, almost 30 years after I opened my first business without being a crackerjack marketer, because people remember and they associate me with that brand of quality and professionalism and connection and authenticity and service and quality. It's like, anyway, just makes the job of growing a business easier, I think, if you really are branding the experience.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. It reminds me of a mentor I had a number of years ago when I was working in marketing, and we were struggling a little bit with a campaign. He had worked for USAA for a number of years, and he just said, we don't have to struggle that hard. Make it all about them. and we got it, that one line, we just got it. So let's go into your author expertise, because I love your foundation of your book, or in the case of some folks in our audience, the brand messaging, the copy that you're writing to talk about yourself, or in the case of a book to talk about your solution or your story, needs to be based on a human feeling, on a human touch. Talk a little bit about your work and that particular foundation, Christine.
Well, it's funny. I certainly never in a million years thought that I would be a, transformational author coach, publisher, book professional, not by any stretch of the imagination. I blame it all on my husband because he
Shame
got a
on him.
divine download one day. I know, right? We were listening to Mark Victor Hansen and Robert Allen at an event, and my husband gets his idea to write this book. And he's like, I'm going to go interview hundreds of Major League Baseball players, and I'm going to like extract their wisdom of success, in a game of failure. I'm going to write a book about it. I'm like, great, hon. You don't know any Major League Baseball players, nor do you know anyone who knows any Major League Baseball players. Lo and behold, 2 years later, 300 plus interviews later, he's got all the information. He's got this book ready to go, and I'm having to figure out how in the God's great earth. This is before Kindle. This is before CreateSpace. There's when you had to order thousands of copies of a book from a printer. And I kind of found myself in this world of publishing, and I've been in it now since 2004.
Wow.
And what I've come to learn over the years, because God, I've made some mistakes. I made a huge mistake with my very own first book. I'm happy to share the horror story if you'd like to hear it. But
Please.
what I've come to understand is that when people write books, especially people like, who are here with us, service professionals, you're here because you have some sort of meshes, some work, some impact that you want to have in the world, whether you're a massage therapist or a, financial advisor. You're here because you have something to give. And if you're writing, it's because you want that written word through the book to really communicate what it is you're about and how you can impact those people's lives who are reading, who, potentially would be customers and advocates and fans who could help you grow your message and grow your business. But I see so many people who just start writing without putting foundation underneath the book first. This is what happened with me with the first book I wrote. I missed the key piece of foundation. That is the first thing I teach now. And I ended up writing the wrong book. So just make sure that as you move forward with the process of writing a book, if you want to do that, you actually start with a foundation. I'll share a tool with you today if you want on how to do that and get that first brick in place, because you can't just start writing. It's too important. No. It's too impactful. It's going to take too much time and money and energy. You want to make sure you're doing it right. So
what is that first brick?
Ask me anything about all of that.
Now a word from our sponsor, Beta Training and Consulting. BTC is the creator of the B plus C plus S formula. Our clients that implement that formula increase their net income by 124% and grow their business by 17% on average. The best place to start working with Beta Training and Consulting is with our B plus C plus S audit. The service pinpoints issues as well as attributes of your business's unique brand, culture, and strategy. Learn more or sign up for a B plus C plus S audit at www.btcinc.net/BCS-audit. Yeah, what is that? I want to know, what is that first brick?
Okay. The first brick is something that I call the Transformation Quadrant. And like I said, this was a piece that was missing for me. And I wrote the wrong book back in 2007 when I published my first, solo books. I started publishing compilations and anthology type books. And the Transformation Quadrant is obviously these 4 aspects that you have to consider first. So you can jot down these questions real quick, and then I have a whole book written about this. Not a long book, short, easy read, but it'll walk you through the whole process. But the quadrant really invites you to look at the transformation that you want for yourself. So self is one of the quadrants. The transformation you want for your readers, the transformation you want for your business, and ultimately, like the transformation and impact that you want to have in the world. So those 4 quadrants are self, reader, business, and world. And if you're not looking at this idea of writing your book through these 4 lenses, it's faulty. It's like a 4-legged table or chair that only has 3 legs. It might stay for a little while, but then it's going down.
Yeah.
And like I said, that's what happened to me back in 2000. Well, wrote the book, started writing 2008, started writing 2007, published 2008, launched this big, huge $500,000 business in like a matter of months in early 2009 when that book came out. And all of it was just wrong for me at that time. So I,
Yeah.
dark night of the soul, lost everything I owned, had to really go back to the blank slate, blank canvas drawing board and figure out, well, how can I do this right? And
Yeah.
that's where this transformation quadrant came from. And since 2011, I've taught it to nearly 80,000 people around the world. And it's like, when you really do it, the light bulbs that go off will rock your
Yeah.
world and clarify much more than just your book for you.
Yeah, great example, great story. Yeah, it leads me to remember that sometimes we learn a lot more, unfortunately, from failure than from success. And I've got to say that I lucked out because somehow, without knowing your formula or your transformational quadrant, I fell into that the third time I actually tried writing a book, and it worked. The first, the first,
Beautiful.
well, the first two times I tried writing it, I literally sat in a coffee shop with a blank white Word document in front of me. And I get maybe a couple of paragraphs, maybe a page or two, and then life would happen. I'm like, oh, I got to go back and I got to see this page and a half of stuff that I don't even know if it works. And then the third time, I luckily, without even knowing your quadrant, kind of fell into that, because I thought, all right, what is it do I really want to transform in the people that I work with? What legacy do I want to leave? Even if only a couple people buy the sucker, when I die, what do I want to leave? Where if somebody picks it up, they'll glean something that is transformational for their business. And so what I ended up doing, and to your point, the transformation of self, I hadn't intended on this, but in the act of writing the book, what it did was it really clarified my mind in terms of the process and the road that I take clients down. And it never was clear to me before I wrote the book. It really began to hone my thinking. So what I did, and I want your opinion on this, because this is what finally worked for me at least, is instead of looking and staring at a blank Word document, what I did is fortunately I'm a pack rat. I went through everything on all of my computers, all of my thumb drives, all the paper that I had, and said, all right, because my whole thing is brand culture strategy alignment. I said, all right, what's the stuff I've got on branding? What's the stuff I've got on culture building? What's the stuff I have on strategy? I made the headings of the chapters, and I used them all as buckets. I took everything that I had and tossed them into these 6 buckets, which were different chapters. And then once I did that, I found that in the Word document, which needed to be completely wordsmithed, I had over 50 pages of stuff. And now it wasn't as daunting as looking at a blank screen or just a page and a half. Every time I went to work on the book, right away I had 50, 60, or 70 pages. It wasn't like I'm just starting out. It's like, you know what? I'm somewhere 2/3 in this marathon. I got something here.
Well, and what most people do, and like it's brilliant that you kind of figured that out on your own and landed. I love that story. It took to the third time, but you did it, which is awesome. They say the third time's a charm, and apparently that's true in your case. But the thing that I see so many people do is they just start writing without that foundation, without the structure, without the purpose, without the clarity. And it's almost like if you can imagine a river that had no banks, like the water just ends up everywhere. And if you then build the banks and try to get the water back in the river, I mean, good luck. It's not going to happen. So I always tell people, when you build that foundation, starting with the quadrant, and then, all the other steps that it takes to get the foundational pieces, it's like, oh, now the river, called my book, has the edges, has the banks, has the structure, so that the creativity and the words can then flow to an end. There might be some twists and turns and rapids and slow parts and whatever, but you know where you're going, you know the destination, the transformations that you want in all four of these quadrants, and you direct the book towards that. And what happens on the other end of it is a reader sitting down, having this profound experience, with you because of the book that you wrote, because it was clear and you did deliver on the transformation that you wanted for them. So it's such an empowering process. I mean, I had a client, her name is Dallas Traver. She actually was one of the first people to publish her book through my program. Her book is called The Tao of Show Business. And I mean, she probably grew her email list tens of thousands of people within, as a result of writing this book. Her business went from under 6 figures to nearly 7 as a result of writing this book. I mean, huge, like, material impact in the world. But what she said was that the most amazing thing that she actually got from the whole process was who she knew herself to be. Like, she got a sense of herself more through writing that book than anything else that she had tried. So it really is a game changer on every imaginable level.
Yeah, I think that really speaks to, that such important point that you make is that human aspect of writing a book or building a brand or providing an experience, that people need to know that there's a human being behind it. My wife and I often joke that, while I was writing my particular book, there were people that suggest, oh, you could get a ghostwriter. You can get somebody that just, takes down some notes and, puts it out there. And we joked because even through my articles, my wife would always tell me, when I read your stuff, I can hear you speaking. You write like you talk. So if I ever had, and there is a book I never really promoted. I'm one of a few different authors on there, and it was somebody that took a bunch of stuff and put it out there. It's certainly good, but you read my section and it sounds nothing like me. And it's like anybody that listened to one show, watched one video or read one article of me, that's not me.
Yeah, because the thing that I always tell my clients as they're writing is, it's like, it's one thing, the words on the page. Certainly those are a huge portion of what the book is that they're going to receive. But what they don't read, but experience between the lines, just by feeling that presence. Because here's the thing to remember as you're writing your book. You are only ever writing your book for one person. That's it. I don't care if 1,000, 100,000, 10,000, 1,000,000 people read this book. It is experienced one person at a time. So the more that you can infuse yourself into those pages and write like it's a personal letter, just someone who you really care about and want to help transform and impact, then every single person who sits down to read your book has that deeply personal experience. Like, they feel like they know you, they can trust you. They don't feel like they're one of all these people who are reading. I mean, if you think about yourself when you read a book, you're probably like, it's you alone in your favorite place to read, and it's just you and that author. And if they've got you and they said they would, like, you're in a relationship with them. They may never know you, but you're in a relationship with them. And it's such a powerful experience as an author. In fact, I used to get, when my book, The Freedom Formula, came out, this was the wrong book for me, but like thousands of people bought it and loved it and still rave about it. Not the right book for me at that time, but I would get messages from people on email. My team would be like, we don't know what to do with these kinds of emails. One of them was mad at me because I made her coffee get cold. Another one was angry with me because I made them burn their dinner. And pretty much I said, the package showed up from Amazon. I opened the package. I looked at the cover. I read the inside flap, and I sat down and I couldn't do anything until I finished reading your book. So I blamed, I was a fly on the wall and had been watching them and wrote it specifically to them. So that's the kind of intimacy and experience you can give someone through the writing of the book. If if you create the structure and put the banks in place and write from the heart.
Yeah, I've had that experience with some books myself, actually, where I read, because it's very seldom that I'll actually take a book and be at home or the office and actually look at it unless I'm looking for a specific quote or something to use with a client or session, where I do 99% of my reading is on the plane. Because I find that I could hook up to the seat in front of me and get some classical music or something, put on some headphones, and block out everything else that's going on. I'm not going to be on my phone. I'm not going to be getting buzzed with emails. That I could actually delve into the book. And I could tell when it's a good book, when I'm really getting something out of it, is when I'm starting to get upset when I hear we've started our descent into Chicago's O'Hare. And I'm like, but I just started this chapter. Can we circle around for like 15 minutes? I'll finish this sucker.
I have so done that, Ken. Oh my God, I have so done that. I'm right with you.
Yeah. Yeah. But, for those folks in the audience, even if you're not planning on writing a book per se, there's a lot that you can learn from this transformational quadrant, in that when you're branding yourself and you're writing that copy, whether it's in social media or an advertising page or a brochure, that it needs to speak to your unique story and who you are. If you don't do that, then it just becomes marketing fluff rather than something that really connects, like the books that we've been talking about. Going back to books and writing one, you thankfully gave us that transformational quadrant, which I think is an awesome idea. Is there maybe?
I don't know if I told people where to get it though. It's
Oh,
pretty easy.
please go ahead and do that.
Yeah. Just go to transformationquadrant.com. So it's easy, just transformationquadrant.com. You can go get a free copy of the book and also a downloadable workbook so you can actually go and really work through your quadrant. So yeah. But what was your question?
We will put that in the show notes, and I'm going to grab that too, because God knows I always need that stuff. My question was,
we got good feedback on it.
My question was, is there, other than the quadrant, which is very powerful, is there number one tip that you would give to a budding author that wants to write that first book, other than the obvious, which is to work with you directly and your expertise? What might be that number one tip before anything else that they should do?
Well, first thing they have to do before anything is go get the transformation quadrant and do it.
Right.
But then I want to share. Can I share 2 other tips? Is that okay?
Absolutely. If you have the time, we have the time to listen to 2 tips.
All right. Perfect. One of those tips is to really get clear on who your ideal reader is. As you just heard me say, that one of the most important things that you can do in writing your book is write it as if you're writing to one person, which you cannot do if you don't know who that one person is. So get really clear on who that person is. What kind of job do they do? What's their life like? What's, keeping them up at night? What are they hoping to receive from your book? It might be someone that you know, and you can imagine sitting down and writing your book specifically to that person. Maybe a colleague, maybe a client, maybe a friend who you know needs what you have. But just know your ideal reader and do not write to some nebulous group of people, one person. So that's super important. Clarify that ideal reader and write to just that one. The other thing, and this is not necessarily recommended for fiction authors, but for nonfiction authors, which if you're writing a transformational book to share a message and get your work out there and, grow your business and expand your impact, I believe most of you will be writing nonfiction. You want to write your back cover copy first. Because if you can do that, 200, 250 words is all it takes. If you can't distill your message and clarify your message into those 250 words, you should not yet be writing the book. You need to be able to clearly and succinctly communicate what it is that your book is about and what's in it for the reader before you start to write.
Interesting. That is one thing instinctually I didn't fall into. So shame on me when I wrote that.
No shame on anyone. You'll do it for the next book.
Yeah. That's the first one was so much fun, especially when I wrote a whole chapter and I lost it in the cloud. That it makes me want to go out and write another one right now.
Ask painful. I had a client recently. She was a client in my because we do coaching and consulting and help people write, but then we also have a publishing company. And she had sent in her manuscript and we sent it back to her after her editorial assessment to make some changes. And she made all the changes. And when she went to press send and send it back to us, it was like gone. And her best computer experts couldn't bring it back. It's so like it rarely happens, but when it does, I think my heart breaks as much as theirs, because that's rough using your content. But she said it's better now, so we're about to publish it for her.
Yeah. The good news is when I had to completely rewrite that chapter after my my wife had to calm me down and threaten to put me in some kind of an asylum, in a straitjacket if I didn't stop complaining about it. It actually did, ironically, at the end, I think turned out better than what I originally wrote. But last question for you. You gave us the transformational quadrant. For our audience that they're thinking about writing a book, they could really use your expertise. How can they best find you, Christine?
Well, transformationquadrant.com will definitely get you engaged in my world and put you directly in touch with me. You can also just go to my website, which is my name, KristineKloser.com. That's where you can, see what we're up to, learn more about my Get Your Book Done program, and everything else we've got going on. So those are really the two best places, Transformation Quadrant or KristineKloser.com.
Perfect. We will definitely put that in the show notes. And just for clarity, it's Kloser and not Closer. In case you're just listening and you want to type that in, KristineKloser.com.
And the first name is with a CH.
Yes.
So it's CHRISTINEKLOSER. You got
yes.
it.
I could see.
It's an easy name to say, not an easy name to spell.
Yeah, I could see people doing the K first and the C later.
Yeah. I'm sure they do.
Anyhow, be that as it may, I had a terrific time speaking with you, Christine. You gave so many great tips, whether our audience is writing a book or just simply, writing some branded copy. There are so many things that they can learn from the tips that you gave, Christine. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks so much for having me. It was a real pleasure and joy to share with your audience.
Pleasure's all mine. And thank all of you for tuning in to Branding the Experience. And here's hoping that you're branding the experience at a very high level for all those you serve. Take care. Thank you for watching Branding the Experience. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're looking for a speaker on branding the experience, on workplace culture, or on business strategy, I have a number of different options for you. And my approach is always to entertain first, engage second, and educate third. It's a formula that leaves my audience not only laughing and enjoying, but also learning. So if you want a great speaker on branding, culture building, or strategy, I'd like to hear from you. Simply send me an email at kbator, BATOR, at btcinc.net, or to learn more about the presentations that I've done that have been successful in the past, go to www.btcinc.net.